This is Spaceship Earth. Like, we're the crew. There's nobody else. Nobody's coming to save us. And I think the environmental community forgets that.
Kyle Tierman here. I'm in Cape Town.
I was the only journalist in northern Nigeria.
Not an adventure until you get lost in Tijuana.
If you get caught inside by a giant wave, you feel really alone.
I love the adventure of waking up and not knowing what will happen and that being my job.
Ethan, back on the mic, dude. I'm so happy to see you. This is just an excuse to hang out with you. I hope you know that.
It's a good one. I'm stoked.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've been cheering you on from afar for a little bit, and then we had a moment this past year where we got to talk about the MPA issue together and get fired up together. And I was like, I love this guy, dude. I want to hang with him more.
That was awesome chat.
That was
dude.
awesome. Yeah. Woo! That was intense. But we're gonna get to that maybe. But I thought we would start with a word that you might have a relationship with. Gyutaku. Gyutaku. How do you pronounce this?
Gyutaku.
Gyutaku.
You almost threw me off. I'm like, how do you say it?
Gyutaku. What is gyutaku?
Fish rubbing. Fish rubbing is the literal translation of gyutaku. Think back before there were cameras. You caught a big fish, a tuna, hamachi or something, and you wanted to like remember it. You want to share it, that memory with somebody. You would ink up the fish, lay rice paper or fabric on it, and press that with your hands and rub everywhere and peel it off. And it's a perfect relief print of the fish you caught. And then you'd write on it what it was, where you caught it, how you caught it. And it's this awesome Japanese art form. I think it's maybe 600 years old.
Wow.
I'm super into it. I do it a lot for my work. Not so much with fish, but mostly with trash. Collect off the beach and out of the ocean. So
Okay. Have you ever done it with a fish?
I have, and you know, it's part of what led me to start printing on trash is that it's very hard to do. So if you're trying to print something like a tunas are like bullet shaped. And if you're not good at gyutaku, you can take a beautiful shaped fish like a tuna and make it look like a Goodyear blimp. You know, you can ruin the image if you don't do it right because they have so much curvature. You're like creating a two-dimensional projection.
Sure.
Anyway, so I'm like, yeah, this is fun. I'm never probably going to become a gyutaku master, or like maybe it's going to take me like 20 years, but maybe I'm going to ink up this net I found on the beach and ink up some bottle caps and stamp those and just take the idea, flip it on its head, tell a story about the way that, you know, if you weigh up all of the fish in the ocean and weigh up all the plastic that's in the ocean, they estimate by the year 2050 there's going to be more plastic than fish by weight. And I have to really look into where that stat came from. It's probably false, but it's maybe close.
Yeah,
you know, and that's gnarly.
Yeah. And obviously fish and plastic have a very twin story that you know you're trying to take something that is maybe a sad story and make it a little bit more beautiful. So let's walk through this process a little bit more. Yeah, this is freaking cool.
Everybody should try this at least once.
Yeah. Because I mean I'm really into this idea of hunting and memorializing the animal in some unique way. I have a Euro mount of a buck that I was able to harvest a few years ago, and it brings me so much joy.
Yeah,
it really is. I would say top 3 possessions that I own. It was on a hunt in Montana, and every time I look at it, it just brings me back to that moment, and it's so undisposable. Like that Euro mount is, and for people who don't know what that is, it's like you essentially take the animal's head, and there are people who will put the skull into a bin of beetles.
That's it. Yeah.
And the beetles will then eat away all of the remains until it's just a skull. Cool. And then there's a whitening process. And it just looks really beautiful. I like that a lot more than doing the more like the trophy mounting with it on. But
Thanks for explaining, because I was like, I have no
Yes.
idea what that is.
Yes, so that's a Euro amount.
Sick.
But I think that for fishing too, like there's so many interesting ways to kind of remember these cool experiences that we've had.
Yeah.
And the Utaku struck me as one that for fishermen, like you could potentially do that.
If you catch a halibut, like I said, if it's really curved like a tuna, it's pretty hard to do a good job with it. If you catch a halibut, they're flat. And I would start there. Start with a flat fish. Even the little rockfish, you'll pick up some texture like pretty easily. And honestly, I would just use a tempera ink, something non-toxic, because then you can make this print and then eat the fish after.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
So, where would you get an ink like that?
Tempera paint. Honestly, it's just like kids paint.
Okay.
So
you paint the outside of the fish, catch a big halibut, paint the outside of it. First one, you got to catch it. And then you would lay it down on rice paper.
Other way around, actually. I would like to, it's all about clean technique. You get that paint, you kind of evenly brush it or roll it with a foam roller all over the fish. And then you're actually going to want to pick that up and put it on a clean area, because anywhere you missed with the paint, it's going to kind of contaminate the background. And then, so you move it from a dirty area to a clean area. And then you get your rice paper or your, honestly, cloth is easier. Like even a bed sheet. It helps to have a friend. You lay it down just evenly and then don't move it, because the second you move that cloth, it's going to smudge.
It's like a fingerprint.
Exactly. And so you just drop it flat and then evenly press, light pressure, all over. Don't miss a spot. And then peel it up and then carefully flop it down somewhere to dry. And it's all about clean technique. If you like smudge or anything, it ruins it, obviously. But you can just try again.
Okay.
So I mean, printmaking in a formal sense of like lithography and all these different techniques are like really intimidating, and you need all the presses and equipment. But I love just keeping my eyes open, looking for texture, wood grain, weird plastic, and
Sure.
that type of printmaking, in my experience, has just been super fun, and it lowers the bar. Like you don't need all the gear.
So you spent a bit of time in Japan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
What brought you over there?
That's what I got. I was doing these prints in my hotel room over there in the middle of the Sea of Japan. I spent about 5 field seasons out there over the course of 5 summers. Each field season would be like a month in one location, then a month in another location. The first location in the Sea of Japan didn't have waves, but the second one down in Kochi, which is on Shikoku Island, has some of the best surf in Japan. So I'm just going to say that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And you were out on a boat?
We were on a boat every day, really for both projects, but we were tagging bluefin tunas, and up in the Sea of Japan, there's a kind of theoretical or like a known spawning ground. Like we know it's there, but nobody's ever like described it. Nobody's ever tagged adult tunas that have gone and done the nasty and spawned in this part of Japanese waters. And so that was the project, was like try and catch them in the act, basically. Wow. So we were working with commercial fishermen. These guys are just salt of the earth. Like, they use what's called a set net. It's like about 1 kilometer wide at the opening, and it's this labyrinthian structure anchored to the seafloor. It's honestly ingenious how they do it. And the fish can swim in and they can't swim out. So they go through smaller and smaller sections, and then they get stuck at the end. And then every day we motor out there with the fishermen, and we haul up the net into a smaller and smaller kind of pocket, and you never know what's going to be in there. Could be a 500-pound mako shark, could just be like 10 tons of squid, or like 50 giant bluefin tunas. And so we then essentially pay the fishermen to scoop them out, put them on our surgery table. I'll either do an incision in the stomach and put an internal archival tag, or an externally mounted satellite tag. And those 2 different types of electronic tags tell you different things. Generally, they tell you the location of the animal over time, its depth of swimming at, the temperature of the water. If it's inside the fish, that tells you the temperature inside the fish. And yeah, a whole bunch of interesting information, which you can kind of use to understand their little mysteries of where they go and what they do.
So are you bringing the fish up with a hook and then making the incision? What does that process look like to make the incision with a tag for science while not killing the fish?
Great question, and it's pure chaos in this case. Like,
Bluefin tuna are hardcore.
Yeah, they're not tired because they've just been swimming around this net. Up until this point, I think there'd only been a couple satellite tags ever deployed on bluefin in Japanese waters, and this project started as a with a memorandum of understanding between the Japanese government researchers and the Monterey Bay Aquarium, where I was working at the time, part-time. And they said, hey, like, you guys have done a lot of satellite tagging, come over and we'll do a project and like teach us how to do it. We'll write some papers. And it was unreal. And so basically, the funny thing, when you tag a bluefin with like hook and line, they're tired by the time you get them to the boat. And they kind of flip a little bit, but you can kind of keep them still. If you just dip net one out like we do and put it on a surgery table with a crane, because they're heavy, put it on the table, they are mad.
They're all the energy in the world.
So mad. They go off. And keeping them safe is the top priority. Otherwise, you're just wasting like $2,000 per tag.
Keeping yourself safe is the second top priority.
Yeah, it gets pretty spicy. But I mean, it's fine. It's Japan, so everything's very safe. Everybody's got a hard hat. Everybody's got a PFD on. So it's very safe. But yeah, you'll get hit in the head with a swinging tuna for sure. Like if you're not careful.
Okay. So you bring them up with a net and then create an incision in the spine, put the RFID chip in, or whatever.
You're close. You're close. So we'll set them on like this vinyl surgery table. It's all soft. And we pour this like slime all over it, so it's super soft and slippery. Because if basically working at the aquarium, what you learn is if you look at a tuna fish wrong, if you scuff them, if you scrape their eye in any way, that fish is going to die. They are so sensitive. They live in a world without walls, right? So they never really touch hard objects. So we take every precaution to keep this thing all lubed up so that they do not get scraped up. In itself, it's for the well-being of the animal, but it's also for the science. If they die, you get no information. So you really want to keep them alive. So we put a hose in their mouth with seawater to irrigate them, so they get oxygen over their gills, as they're pretty freaked out. We cover their eyes with like a really soft cloth that helps them calm down too, and we flip them on their back, and that kind of like people know with sharks has a calming effect where they actually kind of chill out a bit. And that's our opportunity once they settle to make a small incision, insert the tag, suture it up, and release them. Or with a satellite tag, you anchor it into their back muscle essentially, and it takes like less than a minute to do it.
Are tuna? This is a dumb question. Are tuna hemophiliac?
No.
Okay,
they're not. They heal incredibly fast.
But if they touch a sharp object, chances are they won't survive.
It's really, in my experience, it's just about abrasion. So like their eyes have a like thin mucus layer over them. Their whole body has a mucus layer. It's probably probably helps them be extremely fast. And basically, if you scrape their eye, that eye's gonna die. It's gonna atrophy. So we have that in the tanks sometimes. You'll look in there, you'll see a tuna with a white eye. And those fish will survive because we're feeding them in a regular time, and they can escape from the handful of sharks in there. But in the open ocean, those fish are gone.
Wow. So you got to go over to Japan after you had your degree as a marine biologist?
Yeah. It was a lucky gig. I actually had tried to quit my day job in marine science in 2014. But my boss was like, hey, I have this project lining up in Japan. Would you be interested in coming back for the summers to work with the aquarium? And I'm like, oh, it's a sick offer. I can do that. I honestly, I didn't want to do it. I wanted to just be in my studio in Santa Cruz, which I just like got the keys for, built out to my dream space. Just wanted to make art. And I'm like, oh, dude, like going to Japan's like cool, but it just takes me back down that science path, which I knew I didn't want to really do long term. I'm so stoked that I did that because I got literally everything I make today as an artist like is inspired by the time I spent in these little fishing villages just cruising in Japan.
Wow.
So like I resented it fully at the time, and it was fun. But
what made you? What what was the decision that ultimately got you to do it if it wasn't where you logically wanted to go next in your career? Was there a moment or conversation in your head or just, hey, this is going to be a rad once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I can't pass up? What caused you to make a decision that was not necessarily logical for how you thought your career would go?
It's partly about relationships, right? Like my boss at the aquarium was like just the coolest boss ever. He passed away recently, so it's kind of bringing back some feelings here. Basically, he's the kind of boss who would be like, if the waves are good, I don't want you here on time. Like, don't show up. If it's pumping, do not show up on time. And he's old. He was like 80. He's an old guy. And he just had that perspective. So he was cool for a lot of reasons, but like, who's ever had a boss that told him not to show up on time if there's waves? And anyway, he wanted me to do it. And I'm like, you know what? This is a unique opportunity. Let's do this. And also the Japan factor. I was like, I'd never been. Heard it was pretty rad. And so I'm like, this is a good way to get to know it.
Yeah.
So
what surprised you about Japan?
I probably had a little bit of a weird experience over there in the sense that I haven't spent that much time in like the main cities or anything. Japan is like undergoing this massive demographic shift, right? So if you go out to the countryside, it's almost all old people. All the young people leave for jobs in Tokyo and Kyoto. And so we get to this island out in the middle of the Sea of Japan. It's kind of halfway between Japan and Korea, and maybe not halfway, but it's out there. And it's really quiet. Like you can hear a pin drop. And so I think was I single? No, I wasn't single. But it was even if I was single, there were no options. Yeah. Anyhow, it's really, Japan is an amazing place, but it has these really quiet kind of countryside bubbles where nobody speaks English. There's not much going on. And I just learned to love those parts of Japan. Like the quaint countryside of Japan is so cool. And especially down south where there's waves, it's just such a unique environment.
Just a bunch of grandmas and barreling waves.
And friendly. Yeah, everybody's friendly. It's clean as heck.
Yeah.
The social cohesion of their society is jarring. That there's just social norms with everything. More so than here. Like every morning you'd be walking out and there's be like a 90-year-old lady literally sweeping up with like a little dustpan and broom in front of her house, like crouching down, standing up 100 times, picking up the leaves and any trash, and it's immaculate. Everybody does that,
right?
Basically. So the net experience is that everybody cares about this place, and it comes out where it's super clean as a result.
Yeah, there's no trash.
And nobody wants to misbehave because everybody's going to be mad.
There are
so different, dude.
Few writers that I, 2 or 3, where I've read every single thing they've ever written, I think. And one of them is David Sedaris. I'm fairly certain I've read every word he's ever written. And he has one book where he talks about his time in Japan. And he talks about learning Japanese and the cultural customs. He's a very funny writer. Love funny writers. And he tells this story about someone who doesn't have money for a cab to get home. So they ask a police officer for money, and the cop gives them the money with the promise that they'll return the next day to repay them. And apparently the idea that you would not return the next day to pay back this officer is just unthinkable in Japan.
Too much shame involved there.
Too much,
It's people go out of their way to help you even if you just have a slight look of panic on your face, what train is? Yeah, somebody's like, "Oh, are you okay?" I'm like,
"Wow,
I actually could use some help." But it's a little over the top. I have a cousin who's a New Yorker, and he hated it. He's like,
funny.
"Dude, nobody would tell me what they really felt."
Right.
And he's like, the only place I ever felt comfortable was in Tsukiji Fish Market because people are like, "Get the fuck out of the way!"
Right.
Because they got these little carts and they got to get their fish over here.
New York, yeah.
It's New York and a little bubble in Tokyo.
And
honestly, as working in Japan with colleagues, it was always this kind of you never really know what they thought. And so that's, and it takes years to build trust. Like,
Sure.
Even like year 4, and they're like, hey, you're not going to, it's in the contract, but they're like, you're not going to share this data with this person, right? And we're like, dude, we've been through this so many times. Of course I'm not going to share that data with them.
Right.
But it just is a very patient, long view culture. And yeah, it can be like off-putting, I think, to some people.
Sure. And they're very indirect.
Yeah,
Right.
and directness is not rewarded. Like
Directness
you're going to
is
get rewarded but directness is going to get you more delay for sure.
Yeah.
It's like asking a shaper, when's my board going to be
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
you just extended it another month.
Oh, the
exactly.
rack. Yeah.
That's funny.
It's the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
As an artist, did you find that long view and that patience as a culture also represented in their art?
Yeah, 100%. My favorite quote is from the guy Hokusai, who did obviously the Great Wave of Kanagawa,
Sure.
the most iconic piece.
Yeah. Tomorrow. Have you ever read that book?
No.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
it's such a good fiction. It's about these video game designers inspired by Japanese culture. The cover of the book has that famous wave on it.
Sick.
Highly recommend Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. If you're looking for a great fiction.
Whoa, sweet.
Yes.
Thank you.
Keep going.
I mean, I just to your question, he had a quote that was something like, he's like, everything up until 70 was just practice. That like I think his like 36 views of Mount Fuji, which is that wave is one of them. I don't think he did it till after he's 70, right? And he's like, and so that tells you like this concept of mastery, and the patience, of just becoming extremely good at something. That's how they view many things. It's probably getting lost and changing, if I had to guess, but with technology and everything, but it's still there, and you encounter it regularly.
Yeah.
It is that part's really inspiring, but also it's just a different kind of iconography. Like that, what I took from it was just very simple. I saw a couple different depictions of water, and I saw them. A synapse went off. I'm like, these carved lines on a temple beam, I could make those using old fishing rope that like I've been just digging around the harbors looking at rope and piles of trash, and I'm like, click, and literally everything I do now is I just make Japanese wave patterns out of fishing ropes. That's my whole job.
So where were you when you had that idea?
Sato Island in the Sea of Japan. And I just went to a temple because, again, nothing to do. Nobody's speaking English.
Sure.
I'm just cruising, walking around. And I lit up because I was like, that's it. That little carving. Took a picture. That's pretty much all I make these days. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a few things to get into. One is the utility of boredom.
Yeah, 100%. I was by myself and bored.
Yeah.
And
the second is, did you how do I get this? What does a good idea feel like to you?
It's a hard thing to answer because like with art, like you can have a strong hunch like this is going to work, but then you actually still have to do the hard yards to like make it happen and like figure out a technique and do that. So it's not like instantly gratifying.
Yeah.
The first piece I made based on that observation, I tend to make a mistake when I try to make something new. I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna make it big, So I made it 8 foot wide and 5 foot tall, like extended a piece of plywood just to make it taller, and to make this thing, and it was a disaster. Like the geometry kicked my ass, and it took so long to try to figure it out, and I didn't have the technique, and so I'm like, that was dumb. I still have that. Well, no, I donated that piece. It came out. I salvaged it. And donated it to the David Brower Center.
Oh, cool.
So I learned from that, and now I'm making big ones of those. But it's been 4 years that I figured out how to do it. Maybe longer. Like I did ones for the Outer Known store different stores.
Those are so cool. I was checking on your Instagram.
That was a fun experience, but it was like I finally figured out the technique after all these years, and then I figured out how to make them even bigger. So I started big, worked small, and then worked bigger. Right. And so it's like a delayed gratification when you have an idea. You have to go figure it out first.
So will you take a bunch of different kinds of fishing rope and then lay those on plywood and create some kind of wave shape out of those various fishing ropes? What am I missing in that process?
That is it.
Okay.
It's simple, but I will, without giving too much away, there were I went through a wide variety of ways of cutting the rope, wide variety of ways of attaching the rope to the plywood. And I have there's some other artists who are kind of in that space now, but I don't think they figured it out. So I'm a little cagey with
the you
details.
don't give away your trade secrets,
just,
but
I feel
it looks freaking cool.
I had to suffer to figure it out and do it the wrong way. I don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, but it's at least it's working for me for now.
Were you in New York doing the outer known stuff?
The fun thing with those is that I figured out how to build these panels. That one was 23 feet wide and 7 feet tall, so pretty mackin'. And I built it in pieces, like a puzzle. So I built it in my studio here, created it up, shipped it to Soho, reinstalled it like in a big puzzle piece, big puzzle pieces on the wall in New York. So that was fun because it's not something I hadn't made them in pieces like that before. So I was kind of freaking out, flying over. I'm like, there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together.
Right.
Here,
So did you have to fly over all the materials?
No, it was all got shipped, and I just showed up with some tools.
Okay.
And fortunately, I was able to put it back together.
That's great that these brands are hiring you to do this stuff.
Lucky project.
Yeah.
Great client. Super stoked that happened. The retail market is difficult. I don't know how many stores they're going to open up, but I'm lucky. We did 4 stores in 6 months, and not many brands want to put the money into having a artful display. They just want something quick and done, So they had a cool vision with it. So, it's nice when that kind of thing happens as an artist, a brand you like and mission aligned, and they're going to pay you to do something cool.
Yeah.
Damn, that doesn't happen very often.
Sure, in a place like New York where there's gonna be a lot of people walking by.
It's cool to. I actually really liked New York. It's so loud and raucous. And
Dude,
dirty,
I took my first trip there last month.
It was nice.
It's amazing.
It's so different. I loved it.
It's the coolest place ever.
Yeah, it makes you want to
sick. Yeah.
visit.
Yeah. The intellectual energy there was really impressive to me. The artistic energy, really impressive. Directness, I loved that. And the walkability.
Totally.
I had never fully conceptualized how superior the subway system is to driving in cars.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
We have in most big cities now, we have the party's over. We've ruined driving by the amount of cars on the road.
Yeah.
To the point where it's just slowed to this gelatinous pace. Meanwhile, in New York, you have this really well thought out subway system where pretty much you're 5 minutes from any subway that can take you anywhere in New York. And what that does for multiculturalism is it allows you to see different parts of the city with different classes of people, different races of people, all in one space trying to get to the same area.
Totally.
And I think that does a lot for people, for the human psyche to just be around different kinds of people all on their way somewhere does a lot.
It makes you realize how siloed we are in California. You're in your glass and metal bubble, and you're mad at everybody around you, right? Whereas the subway, coexistence is the game. You don't want to be a jerk. You know?
Totally.
So,
and there's it's funny. They had all these ad campaigns on the subway, such as be a courteous subway guest or whatever. And it was a guy who's an actor splayed out doing a dance move on all the seats. So just stuff like that, which is just it's funny.
Yeah.
But dude, my girlfriend and I went to this performance. We'd heard about it. It's called Sleep No More. And it was going on for a couple years. It's essentially
Sounds like my life as a
as a dad. Yeah.
Sorry.
So Sleep No More, it's a performance art project that had just ended when we went there. And there was a new one that had just started called Life and Trust happening down near Wall Street in the financial district. And what it is an hour-long real-life movie that you are participating in. So you walk into this bank, and the theme of Life and Trust is based on a Faustian bargain. You know, the Faustian bargain where the guy makes the deal with the devil. Yeah. There are maybe 30 actors. You walk in. It's a 6-story building that is completely set designed to be in it as a 1920s bank with all these different rooms, and every character has their own storyline within this huge play that's taking place for an hour and a half. The level of detail is unlike any artistic process I've ever seen, right? So you're walking and you're with this group of like 20 people, just like, okay, you walk in, and then you see these 2 actors, and they're not talking. So no one's talking. Everything's silent, but they're some of the best choreographers in New York. So they're going through these dances where you're getting to see their characters play out, where some of the characters are making the Faustian bargain. So they basically get to live one night of their youth before they're given over to the devil. But then you see this other actor and they're running around. So then you separate from the group, right? And first you think like, okay, maybe there's a couple stories here, but New York goes down, right? It's like city, it's a basement city. So all of a sudden you're walking down a staircase and you're alone, and there's another actor having a completely different storyline on a different floor, and you feel like you are in a real life movie that is playing out. It's
like Neo in the Matrix.
It was the craziest art experience I've ever had, and you would have to go 5 times before you're able to see all of it.
I was going to say, you probably need to experience that from multiple times to get the whole story. Yeah.
Dude, it was unbelievable.
Heavy duty. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's cool.
Life and Trust in New York. If you have an opportunity, I would go to New York just to see that
I've never heard of it. It sounds like
go check out Life and Trust on peak art.
Yeah.
I mean, it would take years to pull this whole thing off because every character has their own storyline. So you could follow a single character for an hour and a half. And you'd get to see them go through their arc.
Okay, I see. So you can,
you're walking around, and then you start to follow a new character, and they're going through their arc. But like, there's this backstory of this addictive cough syrup that the guy ended up making his fortune on, and there's underground jail cells, and there's a guard. Like, dude, the level of set design is.
Do people start talking at some point?
No, you're just quiet. So you're quiet the whole time, and when you walk in, they give everyone a mask. Okay. So you and all the participants are in this like eyes wide shut style movie, right?
Voyeuristic kind of thing. Wait, your mask is just like a blank mask, or is it a character?
Yeah, it's a blank white mask that looks kind of creepy.
Trippiest thing I've ever heard.
Right? So you're with 30 people, and you have these trippy masks. Right? And you're walking through this thing, and then at certain points, like, someone with a mask will start doing a choreograph. Oh. So you're like who's with me? This is crazy shit, dude.
This is heavy. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I mean,
it takes you into a dream state.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that I feel like everybody should hear about that.
Yes. Life and Trust.
People think about Broadway, and like you go sit there and you watch and you kind of know what to expect. This is obviously a whole nother deal.
Yes.
But more interesting, probably. Yeah.
I was blown away, man.
Sick.
It was really...
And you're into narrative, obviously, and stories, and so this is like that on steroids in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and just going back to Japan and the attention to detail and the time it takes to put something like that together.
You know it when you see it. Yeah.
You know when you see it in a world of perfunctory instant gratification. Yeah. I was really blown away.
Sick.
I was thinking about this when you're coming over. I was like, given how much you're working with things and working in the real world, do you punctuate chapters of your life with art projects that you've done?
Not intentionally, but that is certainly how it's panned out so far. I feel like I'm in a new chapter. I have been for about 6 months because I finally finished this like overwhelmingly complicated public sculpture. It was not by the city of Huntington Beach, but they had to permit it and approve it. It's on the main street, like 3 blocks up from the pier. It's a large stainless steel whale tail, 12 feet tall, 8 feet wide, probably weighs 2,000 pounds. And it's all made from 1/2-inch stainless steel cable. Took basically from getting the green light to bolting it down, it took 4 years. And that 4 years feels like a distinct chunk, a distinct, like you said, like a segment of my life for sure. Not necessarily in the best way either. It was pretty brutal psychologically. Part of being an artist, I think in many ways, at least my experience has been like saying yes to things, like, oh yeah, I can totally make it.
Yeah, easy.
And I met a guy over a beer. His name is Randy Hild. He used to run Roxy, and met him at a fundraiser. Couldn't really hear, kind of just like exchanged hellos. Very friendly. I brought a whale sculpture, and he was like, oh, that's cool. And ran into him at Lele's, the only real bar on the North Shore.
Sure.
Like a year later. And he's like, hey, whale tail. Yeah. Hey, can you make me one of those whale tails? You make it last like 100 years. And I'm like, hell yeah, Randy, let's do it. And he put me to the front of the line on this public art project. Usually for a public art project, you have to submit a proposal and compete with a bunch of other artists. But Randy has a side gig as a just art consultant and a tastemaker kind of guy, And so he's like, yeah, Ethan, make this for this project. The developer's like, great. Randy said it's great. Let's do it. So all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like I've welded a good amount, but like never welded stainless steel before that. Slightly different. And really didn't have much of a metal shop. So I kind of was like, okay, like we have to come up with an entirely new system for, my 2 options were cast it in bronze, like make one out of rope, cast it in bronze. And that was going to be extremely expensive. I just figured if I just wrap a form in 1/2-inch stainless cable, I should be able to figure it out. And it was brutal. It worked. Yeah. It was terrifying the whole time because I didn't know how to do it the whole time.
What does your team look like?
I actually hired 3 different UCSC postgrad, like some had just graduated, some had graduated a couple years ago. I needed a team because the whole time, the thing that made it so stressful is I never knew when it was due. Fortunately, thank God, construction projects are always delayed. And so it was supposed to be due March 2023 maybe. And I mean, it was a full year until they actually needed it.
Yeah.
Later. Like, oh, dude, it was so gnarly. The whole time I'm like waiting for the call. Hey, can you come and bolt this thing down? Otherwise, like, they had to construct a whole landscape thing around it. I didn't want them waiting on me.
Yeah.
So that pressure was pretty heavy duty of not wanting to hold up a giant multi-million-dollar development, because that was the whole backstory. In Huntington Beach, they have a law where the developer has to pay for public art if they're constructing a project of a certain value. So they can't break ground until they get a permitted, approved art project by the so you got all the leverage, which is cool.
Holding up a huge thing. Wow, that's cool.
So they can't break ground until they get an approved project. Fortunately, that was me, and then they carried on. But I just didn't want to hold them up later. So
Sure.
It was a sprint. My daughter was born basically right when I started the fabrication. I thought I was gonna have it done before she was born. Got busy, and it was insane having a kid. And like first kid, like such a new experience. I was trying to cherish that. Also just being on the hook for like a serious public sculpture.
Wow.
And not know, and just the guillotine was just hanging, it's like, when's it gonna drop, So I had heart palpitations, and tried to be the best dad I could be while still like literally just grinding psycho hours.
Wow.
I had a good team.
And where were you working on this project?
In my studio, which I kind of converted to a metal shop for the project. So anybody who walked by my studio on the west side the last 2 years would have seen what looked like an airplane hanging in there. And it was a blue whale tail hanging sideways on a couple cranes. And just slowly, carefully wrapping, bending, torching, tensioning this cable all the way around this thing. And the whole story is that blue whales, a lot of whales, end up getting hit by large container ships. Especially during the pandemic, our shipping traffic increased like crazy. People just ordering online like crazy. And some of the best blue whale habitat in California is outside of our two biggest shipping ports, really, Port of Long Beach and outside of San Francisco. So blue whales and other whales have not adapted to understand what the sound of a ship is. They have no idea what it is. They actually have, in some cases, like these weird behaviors where they don't know what that sound is and they like sink below the surface of the water like 5 meters, 10 meters, and they still get hit by the ship, you know?
Sure.
So they just like do everything wrong and deer in the headlights. And sometimes it doesn't kill them, but it often does. And blue whales sink. So it's hard to estimate actually how many whales are killed. But it's probably a pretty decent impediment to their recovery of the blue whales. And so it's an interesting issue because it actually has some solutions. And that's why I was excited to make a project that was like had a positive spin. There was some research done that showed that if vessels slow down, like these are big ships, like giant cargo ships, if they slow down to 10 knots in these kind of whale-rich habitats, the likelihood of a fatal collision is reduced dramatically. Like it just, I don't really understand why per se.
Yeah.
You think the forces at play are so big, but apparently it doesn't kill them.
Wow.
And it's less likely to be a big injury. So they started this thing called the Blue Whales and Blue Skies program, because there's also a carbon emissions benefit.
Sure.
Not just carbon, like lots of other nasty things coming out of these cargo ships, because they're burning like the lowest quality fuel you can burn. And all that just blows in over LA and blows in over San Francisco, right? From the ships. Yeah. So blue whales, blue skies. Basically, it's a voluntary program. And the reason this is a positive story is there's been massive industry adoption of it. By voluntarily reducing speeds, they can estimate that the amount of mortality on these blue whales and others has been greatly reduced, and a certain amount of emissions as well. So it's the kind of thing that over half of the industry ships have adopted it. You'd think it would, at this point, maybe become law, but at the current time, it's still a voluntary program.
Wow, that's a great story.
But it's rad. It's
that's
really
rad.
working.
Yeah, I see the headline. Your one day shipping on Amazon is killing blue whales.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody wants that blood on their hands.
Yeah.
You know, whales have occupied have come to occupy a very special place in society. We used to just light our houses with their oil from their blubber, you know, and now it's like
Nantucket Island, right?
Yeah. Now we can't.
The
now
wealthiest.
We can't even touch them.
Yeah.
Touch them. Don't hurt a whale. And that's a big problem for fisheries, and shipping. But whale safe shipping is like, these companies are paying attention because they know that it's a really bad look.
Sure.
To
whales are the closest fish that almost seem like they have eyebrows.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And we love animals with eyebrows.
Their expressions are rad. I mean, there's this guy, Brian Austin, who did a project called The Eye of the Whale, diving in Tonga and all over the place, but taking the best possible quality images of humpbacks and others, and then printing them at full scale.
Wow.
And so his exhibitions were so cool. You could walk in to a room with a whale and look in his eyes just like he did. Super rad. And, you know, it's easy to go down this like whale loving rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, when it comes to fisheries, we have this really interesting situation where
P.S. Dude, you just brought me back to this one time I was at Burning Man in my RV. I took a lot of acid and I turned on blue whale sounds.
Whoa, heavy.
I was with my friend and we were just looking up, listening to blue whale sounds on acid. It was fucking crazy.
Deep communion. Yeah. Well, I just saw it recently that there was
a while.
I gotta look this up again, but people have been trying to figure out how to speak to whales through using AI to create a language model for them. And I'm pretty sure I saw the headline is that somebody had their first chat with a whale recently. I should have clicked it.
ChatGPT, Chat WHALE.
There's enough information, enough patterns that you can start to pick out some. I mean, we know a lot about whale language. We know they have names, specific dialects. I mean, it's kind of insane actually how much we know about whales and how much in their speech. And funny enough, then you counterbalance that with the fact that like the oceans are like crazy noisy because of the way we have industrialized them. So it's pretty gnarly how we can accept that these animals are like hyper sentient and socialized and civilized basically, and then we're like, oh yeah, but we're still just gonna like ruin their ability to hear. And
right, but you're mentioning the conservation of whales, like that they have come back. Like, what's your perspective on this?
Oh yeah, I mean, Marine Mammal Protection Act has just done a lot to bring whales back. It's federally illegal to harm a whale. So and some species haven't quite recovered as fast as you would think. Like the blue whales, it's a success story, but it's not like they're through the roof. But something like a humpback, like, man, our population up here is just going nuts. And that, in a sense, leads to inevitable interactions with fisheries. So there's a huge, I'm not going to say unsolvable, but it's untenable, the situation with the crab fisheries and kind of any vertical gear fishery where you got rope in the water. It's a long story, but basically humpbacks get tangled up in fishing gear, and because of the laws on the books, the feds essentially have to shut down these fisheries, and it just destroys the ability of fishermen to make a living off of at certain times of the year, important times of the year, like around Thanksgiving or something. They can't catch crab, and so the whole push from the feds and others is to go to what's called pop-up gear. So typically you drop your crab trap down, you have a rope, and it goes to a surface buoy. That's the way people fish crab a long time. That vertical line hanging in the water for days is the thing that snags a humpback that comes in to feed in that area. So the whole idea is, well, let's have that line instead coiled up into a trap and with a float, and then you send an acoustic signal to a little device that pops, and the float hopefully deploys, floats to the surface. Oh, there's my float, there's my line, haul it up like you usually do. Lots of issues with it. It's like a relatively new approach, right? So anything that's new, there's going to be bugs, and that's one of the problems. Like, talk about pollution. If you're dropping these traps down there, loaded up with all this electronics and stuff, and if the acoustic pinger doesn't work, you just lost it. It's all down there, and they're expensive. So fishermen are being asked to foot the bill on an insanely challenging new technology, which has a good long-term goal, but like, it's just so untenable. You're asking people who are broke to change adapt to this new gear.
Sure.
And it's heavy. The other side of it is, if I'm going fishing and I'm going to drop my crab trap down, I have no idea. I can't see through the water. I don't know if there's another trap down there. So if you drop your trap on top of somebody else's trap, that's going to go really well. So there's just all these hiccups with it. Nonetheless, East Coast, West Coast, this is the direction that things are going. And the only thing I can hope for is that the technology catches up. I hope that the feds subsidize it so that fishermen aren't being asked to foot the bill to adapt to this pretty big ask, which is ultimately prioritizing whales over people, right?
Right.
Like it's, and that's where fishermen are like, let us take a handful of humpback whales. They're abundant. We used to kill them like crazy, and that's the moral argument behind the whole thing. It's really challenging people to say, is there an acceptable level of whale death out there? And society just says, fuck no, and fishermen don't want to kill whales either. But like, that's the dynamic at play. We came to value whales so much that we won't even allow any amount of mortality, really. So it's a really untenable situation. And I'm a little bit sometimes sucked in on it because I make art out of rope. I make art out of old fishing rope, and I hear stories from fishermen all the time, and they're bummed. They're just so bummed about this issue because they can't make any money when they can't fish.
Sure.
So,
It feels somewhat parallel to the wolf issue in Colorado. I have a good friend named Kevin who works with a lot of ranchers, and he kind of summed that issue up very concisely. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I am. But he's basically like, yeah, you are in a sense valuing wolves over people to a certain point, and it is a similar class of people. It's usually very blue collar ranchers that are struggling to make ends meet, and there are various things that they've put in place there. At least in certain areas of reimbursing farmers if their cattle get killed by wolves. But it's so radioactive when you start to get into the charismatic megafauna and the animals that we like.
Right.
Versus animals that we think are gross.
Yeah, like let's think,
Spiders.
nobody trips out on spiders. Yeah,
Nobody's tripping on spiders.
but I don't know. As an artist, like my job is in some ways to raise awareness of these issues. I do not have solutions on this stuff, but making art out of old fishing rope,
Right.
I hope stirs it up.
Sure.
The people who have no freaking clue about this stuff, hopefully they get something from it to say like, oh, like I didn't know that was an issue. And like, I don't know. I it's hard to stay positive with it because it is really, I think at the end of the day, it's hard to know who to feel worse for, right? Like the whale that's suffering the worst possible death, starving, dragging old fishing gear around for months and months and becoming thin and just wasting away. Or a fisherman wasting away, can't fish, can't feed the families, can't buy gas, right? Like those are the deep moral, hopefully, questionings underneath the work that I try to make because hopefully it looks pretty and people want to live with it in their house. But I want them to think about sustainable seafood and ask hard questions. That's what.
Well, you're comfortable living in nuance.
Yeah, I mean the whale one is hard. Nuance matters, but it's hard to know. There's not necessarily like a right answer too.
Sure.
So art is the thing that can handle that, right? Like, and I'm uncomfortable with that a lot because as a scientist, I want to have like the right answer. But like art can just leave it hanging. And maybe by just letting it percolate, somebody's going to come up with a freaking solution or an idea. Like I have to step back from it.
Right.
That's a weird space for me, but that's what art is for, is to let things bring them into conversation, right? So
yeah, I mean that's the greatest books are not telling you what they're about, right? They're letting you think about it for the next day, the next week, wondering like, man, what was the point of that in the end?
Yeah.
And leaving it up for interpretation rather than trying to jam it down your throat.
Totally. That those are the good ones. They keep you like spiraling and thinking.
Yeah.
So, but then on the other side, it's like, okay, I don't want to have this academic thought exercise and like at the expense of the communities who are actually suffering, right? So like, I don't know. I feel a lot of times the commercial fishing is just like it's sad. It's really rough. Seeing what people have to deal with. So, and you kind of end up with a lot of empathy for folks because it's like there's a lot of regulation,
Sure.
And as environmentalists, we've talked a lot about this. Like, it's important to keep your humanity. And I experienced this at a recent fish and game meeting. I swear, man. It's like a fishery for the shrimp up in Northern California. There were 3 reported entanglements. They can't necessarily be attributed to this fishery. Nonetheless, maybe it was from the fishery. Nonetheless, they shut it down. And it's only maybe like 10 boats or something. It's a small fishery for these little shrimp. And I'm listening to these folks from these big NGOs saying, like this, we got to preserve biodiversity, this, that. It's all about the whales. Not once from the commissioners or from anybody at this, any of the NGOs at this fish and game meeting, nobody ever like expressed an ounce of compassion for the people whose livelihoods just got swept out from under them because who knows? Maybe these whales swam up the coast with this gear from the Dungeness crab fleet. Like you have no idea.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, their livelihood's gone. They probably saw it coming, but I think the lack of awareness and compassion on the environmental community's part is a losing formula for the long run, because I think it's just building up to a weird pressure point.
Trust me, man. I can
Yeah.
say a lot about that. I was a dude who won the Peter Benchley
Yeah.
Blue Vision Youth Award, the Brower Youth Award. Like I was, and still am. I think I'm very aligned with you environmentally, and I took a step back from being Mr. Rah activist over the past couple of years, and I feel like had to reassess what my place is within that, because I just kept coming across how unself-aware a lot of those people are and how alienating they are to other humans that are just trying to get by, and how sanctimonious a lot of them are, and humorless. And I just saw it as like, dude, this is a perfect recipe to get someone like Trump elected.
Yeah, I
Like
can't see it any other way.
You are
I
just
can't- yeah.
moving people away from you, and you're forgetting that you need to be persuasive.
Yeah.
And I think that persuasion starts with empathy.
Yeah, listening. It's really simple, and I 100% I agree with that big picture view of like, this is why we are where we are, where somehow basic environmental concepts, preserving the place we live, have become hot button wedge issues. And like, it sucks, dude, because you see it happen in these like public meetings where it's just tone deaf. You're like, it's like, I like the Buckminster Fuller one where it's like, this is Spaceship Earth, like we're the crew, there's nobody else, nobody's coming to save us. And I think the environmental community forgets that, where they think they have the answers, they have all these papers they want to cite, and they're like, yeah, like we're gonna captain the ship and we want to go this way. And you're like, whoa, you just like stepped on everybody's toes. Like everybody hates you now, you know? Like it's not a very community oriented way to make decisions.
I wonder if there's new terms we can start to use beyond just in quote unquote environmentalist.
Okay.
Because I do think that there's in recent years been, I would define myself more as like a centrist environmentalist, or like common sense environmentalist. But yeah, man, I mean, I've been just on a personal level really blown away with the MPA issue, regardless of area, where an MPA should go or not go, but just the lack of compassion and ability for some of the folks who are pushing through no take zones to even be able to start an argument by saying, look, I know where you're sitting. I can describe your position better than you can.
Right.
If I were pushing through a no-take zone in Pleasure Point, the first thing I would say is like, Ethan, man, I know how many great days you've probably had out there. Like, I know that this is core to you going out, and like, it's a great hobby for you to be able to commune with nature, to be able to bring food back to your family. It's just fun. Like in a life where you gotta all these responsibilities, man, going out and catching some fish is one of the best parts of life for a lot of people.
Sure.
Like, I get that.
Yeah.
And like, that's how you do it.
Yeah. Well,
and I'd be like, yeah, all right, well, wait, but like, at least it wouldn't just be straight to this, I mean, a fairly militant perspective of, we got to save the sequoias of the sea.
Yeah.
And we're going to pretend to not listen to you when you're making your point. I mean, I've been into some of those meetings where you're making your points, and it's almost like they're like, some people are doing a bit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, dude, are you guys serious?
Yeah. It is almost funny. It's
Yeah.
almost funny. So the approach you just described, I had to like go back down the rabbit hole of like my education and being like, wait a second. Like, I took some classes that talked about marine protected areas. Like, I freaking swear that the whole point was you start with the community. You start with the community, and then it all goes. Like, I swear that was in the books. Like, and sure enough, I went back and down the Google Scholars search, and like, There's so much research that says if you want to create a successful marine protected area, it doesn't matter where in the world. A lot of the research is from like the Philippines or like small scale fisheries and stuff. If you don't start with a community led approach, it's going to fail. Like, because if there's no buy-in, people will poach it. There's no trust. People won't follow the rules, and that's the core of how marine protected areas have been created around the world, is with that community-led approach. There's some other examples where the areas are so big and nobody really owns it, and so they can just draw a line on the map, and that has happened. But the really successful marine protected areas in the world are community-led efforts. And the most interesting thing that came out of that call we did with Patagonia and the other the petitioners who wanted to create these new marine protected areas off Pleasure Point and other places, they explained, we were rushing. It was a quick deadline, and so we called 50 of the top scientists, and we got their recommendations, and that's what we put into our petition. And so if you back up from that, it's like, okay, it's good. It's good to talk scientists. That's great. Like, amazing. I know almost all those people. They're awesome. But they have a particular worldview too. Like they have seen pure nature. They've been in marine protected areas, and they see how well they work in certain ways, and they also have a slight interest in perpetuating that ethos. They live it. They love marine protected areas, and you got to talk to other people. You can't. Those are the scientists are not going to have really. They'll have some stake in it, but the blue collar folks who fish these areas. It's not just blue collar folks. There's a very wide section of humanity who uses this bit of ocean and values it. You can't just not talk to them. It's very strange behavior. It's exactly how not to create a marine protected area is what happened in our area. So yeah, very frustrating experience.
Yeah. I'll say this just for people who don't know. I surf for Patagonia. They basically called me and were like, what do you think of some of these MPA issues? We're very gracious. Some of the people at Patagonia would be like, we want to hear what you think.
That was cool.
Which was really cool. Like that, they are partners with a number of the NGOs that were petitioners, specifically in the Pleasure Point area.
Yeah,
where
they're kind of in between a little bit. It's interesting.
Yeah. So I thought that the way that I'm not just saying this because they sponsor me, but like I felt like they handled it really well in that they were there to ask questions. And the projects that they tend to put their full media muscle behind are the ones where there is community buy-in.
Yeah.
Ramon Navarro, Punta de Lobos, people like that, where we have people here that want to make this thing happen, and we can help you do that. We're not going to jam a policy down your throat. And yeah, I think that what some of these NGOs are maybe missing is that I'm not sure they're fully aware of how much trust they've lost long term with people like me who are quote unquote environmentalists. So I think that there's this sense that like, well, we get to start at zero every year because we're gonna have these various initiatives that we want to go for each year. We're gonna have this plan. We have these funders who are supporting us to go after these initiatives. We're gonna try and get as many as we can, MPAs in. We probably won't get all of them, but we're going to kind of spray and pray here.
That's what it looks like, right?
Right? And, which they would say, like, no, we don't do that. But, like, I don't think that they did that when it came to Pleasure Point, as an example. Yeah. And I think that they don't fully realize that you can't just start again in 2026 and be like, great, we're going to have the same constituency, the same support, the same trust. It's like, no, you've actually lost all that trust now, and you are now at a major disadvantage for all issues that you're championing, including many that people like us are in full support of. Full support of. But now how hard is it going to be to get people like us to be like, hell yeah, you guys are like, we fully trust the process that you're going through to make it here. Like, dude, reputation is all that matters.
I agree. Like you said, that is... It's really unfortunate, and I think of it as a cautionary tale for a lot of environmental organizations, that if you don't do the community work, it's gonna bite you, and it's also a little bit about the science side, because that's the view that I've been digging in deeply onto. And it's pretty much like scientific malpractice to present citations and scientific information, and to never acknowledge that there may be other results that could that detract from what you just said. And that is exactly how they put it. They used all these great papers without citing all these other great papers that said the exact opposite, and were more accurate for our area. And that is scientific malpractice, in my opinion. So when people do that kind of thing, it's so harmful. It ruins not just the trust in that organization, it degrades the trust in science as a thing that we can all agree upon, something that is not necessarily objective, but as close as we can get to having an objective and useful set of information. Like that's why I got involved. That's why I got mad, is like, it was partly about losing our fishing hole. Like, I love it here, and I know it's healthy, and I know that what we're doing is not the problem. And I also know that if we stop doing it, it's not going to help the kelp forest come back. So, like, I saw through their argument, but more than that, I saw how essentially they were, like, undercutting the whole concept of science-based, like, activism, right? Like,
for people who are maybe like, what the fuck are you guys talking about right now? Will you just give a little 2-minute backstory on what this is for people who have no idea what
good
we're
call.
talking about right now?
We're deep in it.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it for years now, it feels like. And that's the crazy part. We've been talking about it for years. We are not paid employees of All Waters or other organizations that are pushing back. We are citizens. And these folks who proposed this idea off Pleasure Point, natural bridges up and down the state to close off areas to fishing, these folks are paid employees. That's their job, is to come up with ideas and make them happen. Their vision was, their petition said, if we close off these areas to fishing, it will help give kelp forests a break. It will help restore the ecosystem and make kelp forests more resilient to climate change, heat waves in the future. There's a slight truth to that, for sure. Down in Southern California, there's some studies that showed that some of the marine protected areas had healthier kelp forests following a major disturbance, a 2015 heat wave. And the theory is that marine protected areas that don't allow fishing have bigger sheephead, bigger spiny lobster. These are two species that eat urchins. That's also debatable. But basically, by putting down a predatory forest on urchins, it suppresses urchin predation or grazing on kelp, giving the kelp a chance to grow and settle and expand. There's no question that kelp forests are not doing so hot up and down the state. The reasons for that are complicated and vary by region. But their approach, say, in Central California makes no sense, because the species that we fish here do not play a role in suppressing urchins populations. Halibut, white sea bass, all these things that we're targeting, they don't touch urchins. So by reducing fishing pressure, there's no effect. There's no effect on the kelp forest health. And there's great studies to that effect that they totally ignored. So that's the backstory. And it's an example of like you said, I think they were just trying to get on the scoreboard. I think they had an idea. They threw spaghetti at the wall to see if it'd stick. And now citizens and groups like All Waters formed to have to do the hard part to resist it, to push back with common sense and good science. And that's the messed up part, is that an NGO should have, like that has a lot of funding, should have the responsibility to do the due diligence before putting out a bad idea that the Fish and Game Commission has to get stuck dealing with for years, like literally years, to decide if it's going to happen or not. And where we're at now is they are amending their petition based on public feedback. I don't know if I can say, I mean, I've heard some rumors about what the amended petition is going to look like, but we'll save that for a future update. Basically, I don't think that's going to go through because the science is obvious that it's not a good idea. It says it's not a good idea. So that's where it's at. It's not going to go through in our area. Are people going to get kicked out of Point Loma? because of this petition, potentially. And I'm not hearing enough people in Southern California be angry or vocal about these potential closures. The science is debatable down there too. Not just the science, the strategy. We can agree that more big sheephead, more big spiny lobsters is good for suppressing urchins. Let's say we agree with that. There's other ways to get more big sheephead and more spiny lobsters. And one of the ideas would be a slot limit. You're not catching the biggest size classes, and therefore they're going to hang out and eat urchin.
Right.
You don't have to kick people out and catching everything that has nothing to do with this problem and alienate all these people. So they're picking the most exclusionary approach possible, even though there's plenty of other ways to go about it. So that's the core of that issue. It's been an experience.
Yeah, and you've been showing up to a lot of these Fish and Game meetings. How do those normally go, and what can what can someone expect if they're wanting to join in on these meetings?
I was hitting it pretty hard at first, and then I kind of had to step back and just do stuff with my family. We went on a trip and fell out of loop, and that's why All Waters is rad, because you got a guy like Matt Bond who's just like an animal, and he just stays in touch, and he's very personable, and he's super freaking smart, and he just he brought me back into it. He like updated me on like what's going on, and half the battle is just having any idea what's going on.
Sure.
What's actually going to be talked about at a meeting. You can't talk about things during your 1 minute that aren't on the agenda. There's an open public comment at the end, but everybody's all tired and nobody listens at the end. So there's a lot of strategy and tact in presenting at a meeting like a Fish and Game meeting. And that's why there needs to be this, that's why All Waters is created, because there's this weird dead space where the NGOs, environmental NGOs, are super organized. They have people ready to speak. They know exactly what they're going to say. It's all vetted. And the fishing community sends up like the angriest people it can. You know, it doesn't send it. People just show up and they're pissed and they're sometimes crazy, you know, like violent, you know, mad dudes.
Totally.
You're like, oh,
they've been
man.
out at sea and they're pissed.
Pissed. Yeah. And
Understandably.
All Waters has been super successful because they're trying to come at it in a like cordial way where like, hey, like I understand this is the process and this is what we think and this is our scientific reference for that, and you know, let us help. If you want to gather more information, let us work with the fishing community to do that for you. Like trying to help, because the Fish and Game Commission has no money. They're broke. Like they just, to do the things that are being asked of them, you know, they have a thankless task really, to try to protect the resource, come up with new things like marine protected areas. They're strapped. And so an organization like All Waters kind of like can be very useful to the commission to actually organize the fishing community to have a cohesive, well thought out opinion, and that is worth a lot because these meetings are just typically chaos and very boring. Very boring. Like it's a thankless thing to go to one of these meetings.
Right.
But it's also, you know, you can zoom in now. You used to have to go sit there. Now you can zoom in and just be prepared with the public comment and don't go crazy on them. Yeah.
You're giving me an idea to hit up. Do you know who Chad and JT are? Have you heard about these guys? So they do these viral clips where they speak at public comment.
Oh my God.
And they're like, we think that there should be a flotopia in the center of the MPA. Like they haven't hit the
need more babes.
We need more babes in the MPA. Like, but they just go viral, right? Because it's just the most boring, like C-SPAN level public comment stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like we got to do a Chad and JT something for the MPAs.
They would crush it.
Yeah.
It's like it's honestly a lot of the stuff that gets said is pretty comical and like, but then it just goes on. Like it's so orderly. It's like you get your minute and like it doesn't matter if you're like a loony, like being super crazy. They're like, okay, next, you know, and like that's part of the thing that's really messed up in a way is that sometimes when you participate in these things, maybe you feel like you got your minute to say your piece. You don't necessarily feel heard, you know, even like you said it, but like it's in the record. But like writing a letter, I think can be a bit of a better approach. You're going to say what you really want to say, and they do read them.
Yeah.
So submitting letters to the Department of Fish and Wildlife is a good thing. Because, yeah, that minute of just trying to get on your little soapbox and say what you really feel, it's hard. It's hard. It's in public speaking is hard, so I've tried to work on that, but like it's, I don't know. I think a lot of people who fish, like it's not their thing necessarily. So I think it's kind of an awkward
they're
dynamic.
like, dude, I became a fisherman so I wouldn't have to talk to people.
Anybody. Yeah. It's a setup, right? And then meanwhile, you've got people who are paid to do it on the other side. So there is not just a power dynamic there. There's a lot there. There's a political mobilization bias. People who are paid to show up are going to show up, and fishermen who are working are going to have a hell of a hard time showing up. The guys are always streaming in from their like boats, and there's no reception, and you can't hear them. And it's like it's a bummer because they had something interesting and informative to say. So it's like there's a weird dynamic here. But that's true of any issue. The people, the paid lobbyists, the people who are paid to care about it, maybe they care about it, but they also, it's their job to show up. That is part of what's going on with our country, right? Is that like it's real hard for people to like feel like they're participating and be heard.
Sure.
So that's
I just had great dude on the podcast, Devin O'D from Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. He's awesome, man. I was really impressed with him, and he was just saying exactly what you said, which is a well-written letter does have an impact. Take the 20 minutes to write the letter because that can move the needle. And I really just go back to this philosophy that the number one threat to the natural world is people not engaging with the natural world. That's it, man. It's kids on their phones no longer knowing what kind of fish are in the sea and what it does to someone to learn the craft of fishing or spearfishing, take the time to understand the dynamics between you and that animal, has a lasting impact that no set of data can ever have. And I think that's just what I stand by is if you can get into the water, if you can fish, if you can do it in a sustainable way, that's one of the best things for community. So, and I want to support that, and I think that I'm not saying that I'm against MPAs outright. Of course, there are sometimes that may be the best solution.
Yeah, they're good at certain things.
But if you're cleaving someone from that deep experience to, go out there, whether they took the subway or they frickin' hitchhiked or they were able to go down and, learn how to hold their breath and spearfish, like, man, that's a great thing for people and for the world. So let's encourage it.
Yep. You hit on a lot of good stuff there, dude. Oh man, we've talked a good amount about this, and I think that your approach really is the other thing that made me want to participate in this issue, because yes, there's this science, core science problem, like with this particular proposal, but also it really hit home. This is like the most accessible, safe place to spearfish and fish from a stand-up or something, or from a board. So like it really like hits hard on that issue. I know a lot of people who learn to fish in this area, right? Myself included. And that really gets at the heart of it. I would say at these meetings, like the first one I went to this time last year, these nonprofits who are pushing for these closures, they had a bunch of kids show up with these posters about saving the ocean. And I saw a lot of myself in them. I came from that space of like, I love the ocean. Like I want to save the ocean. Even the way that they have these kids going door to door and asking, the way they're framing questions, and they say, do you want the most durable form of protections for the kelp forest? People are like, fuck yeah, of course I do. I love the ocean. And if that's all I knew, that's what I would say too. I'd say, yeah, sign yes. But when they say, the other way to say that, do you want the most durable form of protection? That's a loaded question. Like, do you want to kick people out, break this connection that people have with the ocean by kicking them out of it and only being able to look at it? I think the passionate youth are awesome. I love them. I talk to these college kids all the time. I get a lot of talks, and I feel like I want them to go farther. I want them to do I want them to get into the ocean. I want them to experience this durable form of connection, understanding a sustainable food system, and realizing you could be eaten at the same time, right? Like there's something that clicks with that. It's what we're supposed to be doing. And watching a blue planet and stoking out on blue whales is great, but it's in the long run, we need people to be educated, not just passionate, you know? And like, that's the problem with these kids showing up is it's a little embarrassing. You're like, okay, it's good. I'm glad you have your sign that says you want to save the ocean. This is a very complicated, nuanced topic, you know, like let's get into brass tacks, down to brass tacks.
Well, let's be real here too. If you're a kid creating a sign with some friends, you're doing it with your friends, right? People make decisions based off of their peer groups.
Yeah.
And many of us are very willing to overlook science, overlook a more centrist perspective because we have a group of friends that are enthusiastic about a thing. Yeah. I think that we very much underappreciate just how persuadable we are within a friend group. I just had this comic on the podcast named Brent Pella. He does these really funny political bits, and dude, check him out. He's freaking so funny.
Sweet.
But he does Kamala impressions. He does Trump impressions. And I asked him, I was like, dude, you went from LA. That's where you learned comedy and improv. Now you're in Austin. Have you noticed your politics change? And he's like, dude, I could be. He's pretty famous, but he's like, I could be way more famous if I just decide to go far right or far left.
Right.
I guarantee you. And he's like, don't think I haven't had those conversations with myself. I could be mega if I just decided to go in one direction. Yeah. And I said, well, what's keeping you from doing it? He said, well, one thing is I have a really cool friend group. He's like, I have a solid friend group who kind of just are cool with me no matter where I end up going with my views. And I think that there's a safety in psychology there. If you have a group of
Social
friends
proof
that are just like, hey, he's a cool dude, and I'm gonna not you when you're not afraid to push different boundaries of opinions that may go against, let's say, a Berkeley environmental group.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
And are you afraid that group of kids, of college students who are making their signs are going to kick you out of their group if you have a different opinion?
I've struggled with this a bit, for sure.
Because if you are, like, man, they might not be your friends. And it happens all over, right? We tend to think it's just the gun nuts, or it's just, dude, it's people.
Yeah.
And it's people getting around a cause, and you need to be very careful about social pressure.
Yeah. That's a really interesting framing of that. And it's, I would say that being an ocean artist, right? Maybe that's what I call myself sometimes. And I think I probably call myself an environmentalist too, environmental artist. I definitely had to ask myself, like, you know, people, if I'm going to be advocating against a marine protected area, like, I got to make sure I'm right. So I like went down the rabbit hole, did all the research. I'm like, all right, this is pretty obvious. So there was that. Like, at least I had some science to rely on, and I guess that's what I've been trying to stick to. You know, but like, it's like it's easy to get lost in the ether of like, oh, like I'm just gonna stay in my camp and be an environmental artist, and I'm just gonna ignore this marine protected area thing. But I just felt like people like Hans Haveman, our local fishmonger, my cousin or mutual friend Darren, like them coming up and talking to me about it. I'm like, you know, it really doesn't make any sense, and like this thing's gonna steamroll our fun, cool, groovy, sustainable fishing spot. Like, I know this stuff. I know the science. It's my job. You know, like I should probably do something. You know, like if I chicken out on this, like I suck. You know, and I felt that responsibility on this one particularly. You shouldn't pick every fight. I think, you know, I got sucked in a little bit because of some stupid stuff I said on the internet, right? Like I think we remember this. It was really the beginning of 30 by 30. And my friend Reese, who's a good homie, had this idea. He was running the World Surf League's environmental wing called WSL Pure. People love to hate on the World Surf League, so we have to establish that. But his vision was, I want to show up at the United Nations in like 6 months or 9 months with a bunch of signatures saying people, are advocating for marine protected areas, and we want to hit the global 30 by 30 target. I'm like, cool. Like I never really heard anything about it. I'm like, yeah. Like I'm thinking in my head, giant offshore marine protected areas that, like the ones off of the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. Like you get a huge amount of coverage, very little fishing activity. And it's funny how that's like, in my mind, like, yeah, I'm going to advocate for that. Like that's the kind of marine protected area that's going to like get us this global coverage and not alienate a bunch of people who rely on it.
So these are big swaths of ocean, very far out.
Yeah. And not international waters, but within exclusive economic zone. Like there's a handful of these around the world. And like, I think if you're trying to get coverage, that's good. Like, and these are areas that are not very heavily fished. So you're like, it's not really, you're really getting rid of illegal fishing in many cases. So I was like, yeah, Reese, like this is sick. Like, and I'm going to like support you because he's my friend. Right? Like that social proof.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, dude. So I wrote a post and I was just like, it was my birthday. And I like woke up the next morning. I was like,
oh, I got a lot of birthday comments. Sick.
Yeah. Like people were pissed.
Yeah.
People were pissed. And I'm like, oh man, like I was so bummed because I was like, I love fishing. Like why I just like, I have every fisherman on earth like trolling me right now. I'm like, clearly I stepped in something.
Yeah.
And I really had to sit with it for a long time. Like I was so bummed. And I guess like I had to think about like what was I really trying to say, and realized for sure that whenever you're going to talk about fisheries, you have to be crystal clear. You have to be so intentional about what you're trying to say. Because if you just speak in these broad terms like, oh, I support marine protected areas, like fishermen on the other end of the spectrum are going to say like project their worst fears when they hear MPA. It's the MPA in my backyard. When I'm thinking, no, I want to do one offshore that's going to kick out Chinese, like, illegal fishing. Like, let's do that. That's what I'm thinking. And they're like, no, you want to shut down our backyard. And I'm like, oh, no, that would never happen. And then it turns out years later, 30 by 30 finally is actually like, we can understand what it is. In the beginning, it was so nebulous, people were freaking out. And that's what I got caught up in. And so it taught me a big lesson. If you want to, talk about fisheries, you got to be clear. You can't just speak in broad terms. You're going to step in the nest, and just piss people off and polarize people.
What was your first reaction to waking up and having a tsunami of hate?
It had never happened to me before. I was just like, I don't know. I guess I'm probably a people pleaser. Like I like to be like, I like to be nice.
Yeah, you're not looking for fights.
No, I was like, I just want to like hook up my friend's project and get it out there, and like it's a positive, touchy-feely, feel-good thing. But it's really on a little bit on WSL. Like they were stepping into an arena which they had no credibility and no real knowledge, like not a deep, nuanced approach to. So it was kind of a setup, right? So I as an environmentalist and like somebody who works in the space, like in the public space, and like you kind of have to be careful of those types of projects. I wouldn't recommend people like jump onto something like that without really vetting it. So that's partly what happened. And my response was just like, is crushing,
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I just like, because
it's the modern day tar and feathers.
Yeah.
It really is. I think that we're in a place in society where we still are, we're very okay with, canceling people, saying the meanest shit we can on the internet and thinking that doesn't have an effect. But our brains are still set up for 10,000 years ago. And it's very hard for your brain and your body to be able to tell the difference between a physical assault and getting just all this hate on the internet. Like you feel it, right?
Yeah.
It's not just like,
some people
whatever.
can handle it.
Yeah.
Some people love it.
Yeah.
Some people thrive off it, like they just want more. They just provoke it more and more. Like our president, basically, just saying stuff to get people fired up. And I guess I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm like so bummed that I made people feel that way. Right. Like I didn't like, in a way, it was just kind of like a radicalizing moment for me, because I realized I wasn't thinking about it from other people's perspectives. I was just trying to proselytize. I was on my soapbox, and I really trying to be more cognizant and like not say stupid stuff like that anymore without thinking about it first, right? Like really trying to understand both sides.
Yeah.
And that was the takeaway. And that's why I also felt like I had to get involved with the local marine protected area issue. It's like, this is my penance for saying stupid shit on the internet. Like, this is, I stepped in it, and now I'm going to try to be helpful, because I believe that we should catch fish sustainably in America. I don't think we should be importing 90% of our seafood from the sketchiest sources possible.
Yeah.
And that's full circle for me. My experiences working in Hawaii, cleaning trash off the beach and making art out of it, all that stuff's coming from overseas. It's the research group I collaborate with says 90% of it is from Asian fisheries, dumping gear, intentionally just losing it. It's a mess over there. Like there needs to be more regulation. Like, and meanwhile, people are getting just like chastised for the way they're fishing here. And it's like, there's so much, you can't compare them. We are doing it right. And making, at the same time, making it impossible for people to fish. Like, it's like this weird thing. Like, where do you think the fish is going to come from if we shut down California's commercial fisheries in a way? Like, it's going to come from the worst, cheapest possible sources. And so that's like, I tried to like find my moral compass with this stuff now, where I'm like, that's my vision. That's what I believe in. And the art, the public involvement stuff, like the with the MPAs, like, it has to come back to that. That's my touchstone, which I didn't have before. I just was like, yeah, marine protected area is cool. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So that's a learning process. Yeah.
My man. Ethan Estees, dude, I'm a really big fan of the way that you think and are continuing to think, and also the ability to take all that energy and put it into art, I think is really wise for yourself, man. I mean, we've both known environmentalists and people who are contemplating a lot of really big problems. If you let yourself feel it on that level, what we're doing to the planet on a very basic level, and you let yourself, like truly feel it in your heart, it hurts bad, dude. And it's easy to just want to go in a totally different direction and not engage with it at all. And I really think that the only way to continue to dance with these big issues is to do it through art and to find some buoyancy, whatever that is for you, your own unique funky vibe of engaging with these issues and being able to smile at the end of it is what true sustainability is.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
The role that I see is I usually think about it in terms of messaging fatigue. That like, okay, we all know about plastic pollution, but like, how many more times do we need to be told about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Like it's just, we're numb to it. So I see that as one of the touchstones I have with art, that it's worthwhile, is that at least it's fresh. If I make something new, at least it's new, and selfishly, I enjoy making art. Yeah. So I'm sometimes shocked that I'm like still able to do it, and I'm doing it as for a living. Like, that's like the selfish joy of it, but at least it also hopefully has like a positive impact.
Just do it selfishly too. You can just do it selfishly too, though. I think that art can be a totally selfish process, and it's still worth doing.
I appreciate that, and I because it's easy to get too caught up in that when you also have to step back and realize that like people are selling Coca-Cola not out of the love of their hearts, but because they were selfishly selling Coca-Cola. Yeah. There's that line in economics that individual incentives make the world go round, and that is a slippery slope for sure. But you got to find your moral compass. The Japanese expression would be ikigai, the reason for being, that which you can get paid for, that which you're good at, that which the world needs, and that which you love. It's like this 4-wave Venn diagram, and in the middle is the ikigai, your reason for being. And that is something I talk a lot about with kids in college and stuff, where I'm just like, this is an imperfect framework, but there's something in here that is practical in your real day-to-day experience of like, yeah, you got to make a buck, you know, and you push, but try not to like sell your soul in the process, right?
Ikigai.
Yeah.
We started with Gayutaku.
Yeah, sick.
And we're ending with Ikigai.
Full circle.
Ethan Estees, dude, this was such a blast.
That was really fun talking, dude. It was great just to catch up, and I want to hear about your book, by the way.
All right.
I forgot to ask what it's about.
Woo!